Hey guys, and welcome to a WireGuard tutorial using PFSense. So if you're not familiar with WireGuard or PFSense, I'm going to give a brief explanation of what those are. I'm assuming that since you've looked at this video that you kind of have an idea, but if not, here's a quick rundown. PFSense is a open source firewall that you can actually set up yourself, and it's really nice. It's free, and all you have to do is get some sort of machine to run it. And of course, you need to have some of the networking adapters and stuff like that to get it started. In this demo, I'm going to be running on virtual machines, and we're going to be using the WireGuard built-in VPN right here. So WireGuard is a VPN service that you can set up yourself. So a VPN is a virtual private network, meaning that you can set up a virtual network from wherever you are, and you would be able to connect to this firewall, and all of the rules and everything else would still work accordingly. But we're going to get started on working through this so you guys can kind of understand what's going on. So I'm going to jump into the virtual box real quick. So I have these three VMs right here. So I have a Ubuntu external, which is outside of the firewall. So we have a virtual machine outside of the firewall. And then we have the firewall, of course, which is PFSense. And then we have a Ubuntu internal, which means it's behind the firewall. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the adapters. I'm going to start with the external. The external is just a bridged adapter, and it's my wireless card, which I have a Wi-Fi 6 card right here. And then I have PFSense. If I go to the settings and I go to network, I have two adapters. I have one that's a bridged adapter using the Wi-Fi 6, and an internal, which will be my LAN. So the bridged is going to be everything associated with WAN, which stands for Wide Area Network, and then the internal will be my LAN, which is my local area network. And then, of course, as you can assume from Ubuntu internal, or behind the firewall, or inside of the network, this will be an internal network right here. It'll be behind the firewall. The only way outside of the internal network is through PFSense. So Ubuntu can only access everything through the PFSense firewall. So we're going to go through sort of a rundown on some of the things that we'll have to do with this. And if you notice that I'm switching, you'll notice that I switch between the virtual machines. If you're following my mouse here, up at the top left is where you'll notice which machine I'm on. For the most part, we're going to be on this machine. Primarily. So what we're going to do is start with some setup on the WireGuard side, and we're going to kind of go from here. I feel like it would be good for you guys to understand how a VPN works, but if I recommend checking out other videos on YouTube and kind of getting an idea of how it works. I can probably make a video sometime, and I may even link it in the description if I ever make it, about what a VPN is and how it works. But let's get started on the tutorial. So the first thing we want to do is go over to VPN, of course, and go to WireGuard. So we're in WireGuard, and we need to create a VPN tunnel. So where we can get actual connections to our network. So the first thing we're going to do is enable WG0, our interface, and the description, it's going to be WireGuard VPN. And we have a comma-separated list of CIDR masked IP4 and IP6 addresses assigned to the tunnel interface, meaning anytime something connects, we will have designated IPs for it. This is what I'm going to do for the designated IPs. So anything can be in the range of this 10.001 address It just will not go further than that. So as soon as we do this address, 10.0.0.1 is assigned to PFSense. So only PFSense can be 10.0.0.1, right? And right here, we're going to go ahead and generate some private and public keys. We're going to need this later. We won't even have to worry necessarily about how public and private keys work in this case. We're just going to worry about getting them to their designated spots. So another thing we're going to need to do is just add this peer right here. And we're going to call the peer, I guess we'll call them Ubuntu outside, or actually we'll do external. Ubuntu external, meaning he's outside of the network. And then we're going to have to get his public keys in a little bit. I'm not sure if it'll let me go ahead and throw this in. Yeah, we're going to have to get the public keys first. So we won't have to worry about that quite yet. But we do want to save this, and we want to worry about this in a little bit. So we have 0 peers set up, meaning that 0 things can actually connect to the VPN unless we get it all set up. So I'm going to turn over to the external now, which is the outside. And let me go ahead and sign in. And now let's go to the terminal. Now I may have already installed this, but the first command that you're going to want to do is sudo su. So sudo su will put you in the root state on a Linux machine. So this whole tutorial is based off of Ubuntu and using Ubuntu connections. So that is kind of what's going on here, is a little bit of Linux background. So hopefully you have a little bit of Linux background. You won't need it for this tutorial because I'll be helping you go on through it, but it would be handy. So first thing we're going to do is get into the root, and as you can see, we are in root. So now what we want to do is move to another location in the directory. So we want to do cd/etc/. We're going to go here, and I'm not sure, I did install Wireguard, but in this case, if you didn't have Wireguard installed, you could do sudo, or, well, I guess I can just do apt install, and then you would type in Wireguard, and that would install Wireguard. Well, in my case, I already have Wireguard, right? So I won't need that. But after you have it installed, it will create this folder called /etc/Wireguard. And you'll go here, and it'll be an empty folder. So as you can see, we are inside of the folder for Wireguard. If I went up and then did ls, as you can see, we have all of these things right here, all these folders and stuff. And as we can see, we have Wireguard. So I'm going to go back into Wireguard, and then I'm going to clear this. And we're going to have to type in a few commands. First command that we're going to want to do is wg gen key, and we're going to put a pipe. And then we're going to type in t private key, and then we're going to do wg pub key, and then we're going to convert it to public key. So this command is going to generate the keys, and it uses the t key command, so based off of the private key, generate the public key. Let me go ahead and quit out Discord real fast. And then wg gen key, t private key, and then it goes from there. So now what we want to do is run this command, and we type in ls. As you can see, we have a private and a public key. So now we have that completed. The next thing we're going to want to do is type in ls. We have private and public key. And what we'll need is to get these keys and bring them over to this area where we had the peers earlier. Well, this time we're going to actually add the peers together. But first, let's go ahead and do this. So we'll do ls, and we will do nano, and then we're going to do public key. So this is the public key. I'm going to make sure that I have shared clipboards, because we are going to need that in a minute. And then I'm going to copy, and I'm going to exit, and then I'm going to add a peer, add the public key. Oh, we need to make sure that the shared clipboard is on here. So we paste the key in, Ubuntu external. So all of these you don't necessarily need, except for I would recommend putting the allowed IPs and allow all IPs, as long as you don't mind what type of IPs are sent in for this peer, of course. So we'll update it, and now we have our first key inserted. Now we're gonna have to go ahead and generate the actual config file on the external. So we're gonna go ahead and do nano wg0.config. This will generate the config file for the connection to the Wireguard server. So I'm going to copy and paste this template here. You can pause the video and do as you wish with this. I'm going to actually edit a few things on here though. So the first thing is the actual address. The address that we would like on our virtual network, I'm going to do 10.0.0.2 and the client's private key. So we will need to open up another terminal. So we're going to open that up, and we'll do cd/etc/wireguard. Oh, we need sudo. Right, and well, hold up. Let me go ahead and do this real quick. And then we cd gc/wireguard. Let me make sure I get the slash right. There we go. Now we're inside of it. So the config is still being made, so it's empty. The file doesn't exist yet. But we will need the private key. So we're going to do nano private key. We're going to copy the private key. And right here where it says client's private key, we're going to paste it right here. Now this listening port, we actually want to change the port. If you're listening on a different WAN, then I would go ahead and adjust it to whatever port that you have set up on Wireguard. But for this tutorial, we're going to set it to 51820. Now, we're going to have to go back into the internal. And we're going to copy this public key. And then we're going to go back to the external. And then we're going to paste the server's public key. Let me paste it. In the allowed IPs, we're going to do 0.0.0.0. I believe it's .0 again. And then we do 0 to allow the IPs. And then we're going to actually put in the WAN of whatever the PFSense server is. So our WAN is 10.100.33.108. So let's go ahead and get that all set up. So it's 10.100.33.108. And we should be listening on this port right here, right? So let's go ahead and save it. We've already set everything up, and that is the file that we have. So to go, and then we would go ahead and enable the actual interface by doing up wg0 and then .config. I believe we would, well, just the wg0. We could do .config and I think it would still work, but I'm just making sure that for the sake of this tutorial it's plain and simple. Now all of this is just a script, the wg quick. It's built into Wireguard, and it is kind of new to me, but it's super easy and super quick, hence the name -quick. So we'll do wg and then show, and as you can see, we're getting packets received, right? Right here, it's showing that we are getting stuff received, but we're not able to transfer anything. So, and we are getting an internet connection. So let's see what happens when we try to access the internet from the external. So we are connected to our VPN right now. If I go ahead and open this up, we're on Firefox, and let's say I wanted to look up youtube.com. May come in a little bit slow, but it is showing that we're connected. But what's weird is, as you can see, there's not really a connection, right? So there's a few things we have to do. So now we need to go onto the other side of the firewall. We've connected it, it's working, everything's good to go, and it should work. But what we need to do is go to the WAN. Well, first I'm going to save this, and then we'll go over to the WAN. So let's go to WAN, and at the very bottom of WAN, we're going to unblock this and unblock this. Now, this is really important because this will completely tear up the whole setup that you have going on. So go ahead and unblock these two. This is more for IPs that aren't necessarily, that are coming from the WAN, and they're supposed to be reserved for internal. This usually would not be an issue, but for the sake of it being on a virtual machine, this needs to be unblocked. So have those. Now that we have those applied, we also need to go to firewall and then rules. And then for WireGuard, we're going to add a rule and then go to any. Because now that you have this WireGuard network, you can allow any connection inside of the network, as long as it's, you know, within the peers, right? And now that we have that set up, now we can go to WAN. And, well, let me make sure that everything's there. Okay, we have the LAN, and now we have the WAN. And now what we want to do for WAN is to add a listening rule for 51820. 51820. And we're going to allow UDP traffic. Now, the way that this works is to establish a connection to the WireGuard, you need a port where the actual external can talk to PFSense. So let's go ahead and save. Apply changes. And there we go. So now we have the rules we need. we are getting some traffic here, which means there's a good sign. So let's go ahead, and as we can see, we're getting some traffic here as well. But let's go ahead and check on the Wireguard show. Now we're getting actual transfers. So let's go ahead and actually use the internet now. So let's try youtube.com, right? youtube.com. And there you go. So now we're actually able to access youtube.com. And if we wanted to connect to PFSense via here, we can do 10.0.0.1. Remember, we reserved that IP for PFSense. And as you can see, we do advanced, and then accept the risk and continue. And there you go. You have your very own Wireguard setup for a VPN. And everything's all set up and ready to go. But again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. And all the IPs and stuff like that shown in this video will be terminated afterwards. So there really isn't any use for these. But I do want to say that if you do need any help in the comments, go ahead and put those down below. And if you want to show this to a friend, go ahead and link it on over. This is probably a very, very essential skill for cybersecurity and personal home use. So, all right, thank you so much for watching. See ya.